management of these banks will be fired. If the bank is taken over by FDIC, the people running the bank should not work there anymore. Third, investors in the banks will not be protected. They knowingly took a risk, and when the risk didn't pay off, investors lose their money.
President Joe Biden declared, Repos flood hits auction, stupid banks refuse to sell. In the ever-changing realm of finance, we're witnessing a baffling development that has left many scratching their heads. Banks are hoarding repos and refusing to sell, even as markets cry out for liquidity. As whispers of a looming financial crisis grow louder, the question lingers, are these banks protecting their interests, or is there something more insidious at play? With every passing day, the stakes rise, and the potential consequences ripple through the economy. What happens if these banks' choices lead to a financial meltdown that could affect us all? What's happening? This situation is more than just a passing. Consider it a serious wake-up call. The world of auctions is experiencing a dramatic rise in repossessions, and it's hard not to pay attention to what that signifies. Repossessions are no longer a rare occurrence. They're becoming the norm, reflecting an unsettling trend that warrants our focus. And the landscape of vehicle repossessions and the decisions made by financial institutions are far more complex than they appear on the surface. They involve not only individual choices by borrowers, but also systemic issues deeply rooted in the motives of banks and the broader economic policies at play. But why are the banks really holding on to repossessed assets rather than selling them off? Let me explain. The profit paradox. When we talk about banks' reluctance to sell repossessed assets, we're tapping into something fundamental to their operations: profit. Banks, as for-profit entities, often operate with a primary focus on their bottom line. The unwillingness to part with repossessed vehicles can be attributed to a strategic financial choice designed to maximize immediate profits. It's a delicate move. These institutions analyze market conditions and try to determine the optimal time to sell these assets. The thinking often goes like this: if they hold onto a repossessed asset, they can wait for the market to improve, hoping for a higher sale price later. However, this profit-driven mindset doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's also influenced by the economic climate and the policies put forth by the Biden administration. For instance, the policies aimed at revitalizing the economy can, in some ways, create a paradox where banks might prioritize short-term profits over long-term market stability. It's like a double-edged sword. On one side, the administration seeks to stabilize the economy by advocating for consumer protections and financial responsibility. On the other side, banks might see an opportunity to capitalize on repossessed assets while the market is still volatile. Biden has been vocal about the need for corporate responsibility. He often emphasizes that the success of the economy should not just be reflected in the profits of corporations, but in the prosperity shared among all citizens. Yet the actions of banks tell a different story. They cling to their repossessed wealth, possibly ignoring the larger social implications of their choices. The disconnect between Biden's vision for a shared economy and the profit-centric behavior of banks highlights a critical dilemma we're facing today. Biden has said that corporate America must begin to recognize that we can no longer seize profits while another wave of layoffs strikes workers, which underscores his commitment to corporate accountability. Yet the immediate actions of banks show a clear juxtaposition against this ideal. Instead of releasing repossessed vehicles into a market that desperately needs them, especially for those looking for affordable transportation options, they seem more interested in hoarding assets until they can command a premium price. This behavior raises important questions about regulatory measures, or the lack thereof, put forth by the Biden administration to rein in these tendencies. Are there any proposed regulations aimed at modifying banks' pricing practices in the repossession market? Investigating the specific measures that have been discussed or enacted can help us understand whether the government is taking a proactive stance in mandating responsible selling practices. There's an undeniable tension in the air. On one hand, you have the Biden administration advocating for stability and fairness, pushing the narrative that corporate actions should align with the well-being of the people. On the other hand, banks seem intent on maximizing profits, reflecting an ingrained culture that prioritizes shareholder interests over the welfare of everyday consumers. It's crucial to note that these policies don't outright condemn the banks. Instead, they're aimed at encouraging healthier, more sustainable operating practices. The Biden administration is is pushing for a financial ecosystem that balances profit-making with the needs of the community. After all, a thriving market is one where consumers feel confident and secure, not one where they're struggling to keep their heads above water due to delayed repossession sales or inflated vehicle prices. Now, you might be wondering just how alarming the repo numbers really are. I get it. It's natural to be skeptical. After all, it may sound misleading, right? But trust me, when I say these repossession figures are staggering, I'm not exaggerating. Let me explain. How bad is it really? The surge in vehicle repossessions is increasingly affecting many Americans. This isn't just a passing trend, it's a significant indicator of the economic pressure many households are experiencing today. With the recent statistics indicating a startling rise in repossessions, it's time to explore the numbers, the underlying causes, and what it all means for consumers. As we look at the latest data, it's crystal clear that vehicle repossessions have shot up dramatically across the United States. In 2023 alone, repossessions surged by nearly 50% compared to just 1 year prior. To put that into perspective, we're talking about over 1.3 million vehicles being repossessed in just the first half of the year. These stark figures reveal a deeper narrative, one that points to significant economic challenges many Americans are grappling with today. But why exactly are we seeing such a meteoric rise in repossessions? The automotive market in crisis. The main reason for the rise all comes down to a mix of economic pressures that are making it increasingly difficult for consumers to keep up with their automotive payments. One of the primary culprits here is the alarming increase in loan defaults. As financial situations tighten, it's becoming a struggle for many to hold on to their vehicles. But it doesn't stop there. Let's talk about vehicle prices. The average cost of a new car has skyrocketed. Hold on to your hats. Now averaging around $48,000. Talk about a wallet hit. Used cars aren't off the hook either. They're averaging over $27,000, which represents a staggering increase of more than 30% since the pandemic threw everything into chaos. When you combine these high prices with rising interest rates, all of a sudden, you have a cocktail of financial strain for buyers. Speaking of interest rates, they've been climbing steadily as well. For new car loans, the average interest rate has reached about 9.5%, while used car loans are sitting even higher at 13.7%. These numbers don't just look daunting, they translate to real dollar signs that borrowers need to pay back. The more interest you're slapped with, the harder it becomes to manage monthly payments, especially when wages haven't kept pace with these increasing costs. With monthly payments becoming increasingly burdensome, it's no surprise that default rates are spiking, which in turn leads to more repossessions. When folks can't keep up with payments, lenders step in and the vehicles start getting snatched up. It's a frustrating cycle that leaves many struggling to make ends meet while still attempting to keep their wheels rolling. So what does this mean for the average consumer? It's a precarious situation really. As these repossessions rise, many are left wondering how they can stay afloat in today's market. You might think, what options do I have when the cost of owning a vehicle seems to spiral out of control? And that's a fair point. The reality is that each decision becomes crucial when costs of living surge and financial security appears to waver. Moreover, the implications extend beyond the individual borrower. When we see higher repossession rates, we're also likely to experience a shift in the automotive market. A glut of repossessed vehicles can flood the market, potentially leading to price reductions on used cars, which might sound like good news for buyers, but there's a catch. The decline in prices could indicate a struggling economy, which might cause other sectors to wobble. It's like a chain reaction, and understanding these dynamics is essential for grasping what's happening in the economy at large. Now let's talk about the economic impact of repossessions and what it really means for everyday families. When we talk about repossessions, we're diving into a serious issue that affects countless lives across the nation. Economic impact. Let me give a good picture of what I am talking about. Imagine a family who relies on two incomes to make ends meet. Suddenly, one partner loses their job, and the financial strain becomes overwhelming. They might start falling behind on their car payments. When the inevitable happens, and the lender comes to reclaim the vehicle, it's not just about losing a mode of transportation. It's about losing the ability to get to work, pick up kids from school, and access vital services such as healthcare. Another core aspect we need to consider consider is how vehicle repossessions can contribute to the broader economic landscape. When families lose their vehicles, it not only affects their individual circumstances, but also impairs the larger economy. The loss of a car means a decrease in consumer spending, not just on car payments, but in all that comes with having a vehicle. Those funds that would have gone toward gas, maintenance, and general daily expenditures are now diverted elsewhere or may just evaporate entirely. Local businesses suffer when consumers have less flexibility and mobility to shop or dine out. Moreover, repossession can have a profound impact on a family's credit score. Once a car is repossessed, it can drop a credit score significantly, making future loans, like for a home or another vehicle, far more difficult and costly to secure. Higher interest rates can become a real burden through the lending process, as it becomes harder to qualify for decent rates, creating a cycle of financial decline that many families struggle to escape. These issues aren't confined to just urban centers. Rural areas also experience placement in such circumstances, often with even fewer resources or options for alternative transportation. A lack of access to effective public transit in many rural communities leads to real barriers when a vehicle is taken away, exacerbating the challenges faced by families in these regions. It's a problem that runs deep in both urban and rural settings, affecting people regardless of location, but amplifying existing struggles in communities already facing economic hardships. To make things even more complex, we have to factor in the rising costs of living and how they correlate with repossessions. With prices for everything from rent to groceries climbing higher, the financial burden on families only intensifies. Families tend to prioritize the essentials, but when you are scrambling to keep up with rent and utility bills, often car payments may fall to the wayside. The unfortunate truth is that people can quickly find themselves caught between a rock and a hard place. Now let's talk about a significant move made by President Biden in August 2022, the signing of the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, this might sound like just another piece of legislation, but stick with me. It's geared toward making a tangible difference for families across the nation. The focus here is on lowering costs and enhancing economic stability. While it doesn't tackle the issue of repossessions directly, its broader aim to rein in inflation translates into financial relief that can ease some of those burdens leading to defaults. Let's break it down. Inflation Reduction Act. One of the biggest game changers in the Inflation Reduction Act is the initiative to lower prescription drug costs. Imagine you've got high prescription bills piling up. It's enough to make anyone's head spin. The clever move here allows Medicare to negotiate drug prices directly. This sounds simple, yet the impact is profound. Families previously burdened by exorbitant drug costs can now potentially save a significant amount on their healthcare expenses. These savings create a dual effect. You're not just slashing your healthcare bills, but you're also freeing up some much needed cash to be used on other vital day-to-day expenses. Think about it. Having an extra few $100 in your pocket each month can make a world of difference when juggling things like rent, groceries, or even car payments. Now, let's shift gears a bit and dive into the Act's investment in clean energy. This isn't just about hugging trees and saving polar bears, though hey, that's a pretty noble cause too. The Inflation Reduction Act takes a forward-looking approach by promoting investments in renewable energy. Why does this matter for everyday families? First off, we're talking about a boost to job creation in sectors that are both sustainable and future-oriented. When new jobs pop up in the clean energy sector, it opens the door for individuals seeking steady employment, especially in middle-class areas that might have been hit hard by economic upheaval. Picture this: a community where folks are employed in green jobs, installing solar panels, working in wind energy, or developing new technologies to make our energy consumption more efficient. Not only does this provide a stable paycheck, but it also reinforces a sense of pride in contributing to the global effort against climate change. Now, that's a win-win. By facilitating growth in these sectors, the Inflation Reduction Act aims to create a more substantial economic foundation that benefits middle-class families. When families have access to well-paying jobs, they gain the security to manage their finances more effectively. It's all connected. Fostering job security through investments in clean energy can considerably reduce the stress of financial difficulties that might otherwise lead to loan defaults, including issues that tie back to vehicle repossessions. Now, you might be wondering, how does this all play out in real life? Imagine a household that previously had to choose between filling out their prescriptions or paying their car bill. Thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, they now find themselves with reduced drug costs, allowing them to allocate funds elsewhere. This change doesn't just stave off financial complications implications. It empowers families. They're feeling more in control, and that can translate into better mental and emotional well-being during tough times. But the Inflation Reduction Act doesn't stop at just healthcare and jobs. There's a broader vision at play here, aiming to create a sustainable economic environment that can carry us into the future. Not only is this act about immediate gains, it's also setting the groundwork for long-term stability. By investing in renewable energy, the act seeks to prepare our economy for the future, a future that is less dependent on fossil fuels and more advanced with sustainable practices. Now, to really understand the significance of this legislation, let's talk about the collective mindset it encourages. By demonstrating a strong governmental commitment to addressing both inflation and energy costs, the Inflation Reduction Act fosters a sense of trust among citizens. When people feel like their government is working on their behalf to improve their financial situations, it can have an encouraging domino effect. This can empower individuals and communities to invest back into their futures and lay down roots with a sense of security. Broader economic strategy. Under President Biden's leadership, the administration has rolled up its sleeves and focused on broader economic strategies, tackling the root causes of instability and moving towards sustainable growth. Now let's talk about deficit reduction. This might sound a bit dry, but stick with me because this is where the magic happens. The Biden administration has made it a top priority to tackle the federal budget deficit head on. Why does this matter, you ask? Well, a reduced deficit has the potential to lower inflationary pressures in the economy. Think of it like taking a weight off your shoulders. When the government spends less than it earns, we can see a ripple effect, reduced pressure on prices across the board. But that's not all. By addressing the deficit, we could also witness lower interest rates over time. Why is that important? If you've ever taken out a loan, be it for a house, a car, or even a student loan, you know that interest rates can make or break your financial situation. Lower interest rates mean that borrowing becomes more affordable for consumers. Imagine being able to make a major purchase without feeling like you're sinking into a debt ocean. It's a significant relief. Plus, when consumers feel empowered to borrow, they spend more, invigorating the economy and driving growth. It's like a domino effect of financial wellness. But let's not stop there. Another crucial part of Biden's broader economic strategy is rooted in tax reforms. Now, tax talk often conjures images of headaches and confusion, but let's simplify things a bit. The president has proposed an increase in taxes for wealthy individuals and corporations. But don't worry, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. At the same time, there's a commitment to provide tax relief for middle-class families. This dual approach is about fairness and balance, directly addressing the economic disparities that too many people face today. So why is this tax strategy so important? The idea is to create a tax system that supports economic growth from the ground up. Yes, from the bottom up. By increasing taxes on those who can afford it, we're talking about generating additional revenue without placing an unbearable weight on the shoulders of working-class families. That revenue can be funneled into essential services, infrastructure improvements, and programs that boost economic opportunity for all. This isn't just about taking more money from the rich. It's about ensuring that the wealth generated in society works for everyone, lifting families along the way. Imagine being a middle-class worker, grappling with rising costs and feeling like the economy is rigged against you. Now picture a scenario where the government acknowledges your struggles, puts in place tax relief measures, and reinvests those additional resources into your community. That's what this initiative aims to achieve, a fairer playing field. By alleviating the tax burden on middle-class families, they can direct their hard-earned money toward essentials such as healthcare, education, and housing, fostering a sense of security and long-term stability. Moreover, let's not forget the profound impact this strategy can have on consumer behaviors and confidence. When families aren't worried about making ends meet or facing ballooning tax bills, they're much more likely to spend money, create savings, and invest in their futures. This confidence trickles down to businesses, as increased demand encourages investments and job creation. Remember, a robust economy thrives on the principle that when working families succeed, the entire community flourishes. Can Biden's policies save us? Let's talk about the impact of President Biden's inflation combat strategies on the affordability of cars. While his administration has rolled out a variety of initiatives aimed at reducing financial pressures on American families, the results of these efforts, particularly when it comes to car pricing, paint a complex picture. Some strategies have shown promise, but others, they might be making things worse for consumers trying to navigate the automotive market. One of the key legislative efforts in this arena is the Inflation Reduction Act, signed into law in August 2022. This act aimed to tackle the rising cost of energy and stimulate clean energy initiatives across the country. Sounds great, right? The intention was to reduce overall costs for families, making things a bit easier on the budget front. However, there's a twist in the tale. Critics have pointed out that the act, while well-meaning, has inadvertently focused heavily on promoting electric vehicle adoption and enforcing stringent fuel economy standards. This emphasis has led to increased production costs for automakers, which then translates into higher prices for new vehicles. The irony is that while the act seeks to lower costs, it might actually be pushing them up in the automotive sector. Think about it. If a car company has to fork out more to meet the new standards for producing electric vehicles or to improve fuel efficiency, guess who ends up paying the bill? That's right, the consumers. The price tags on brand new cars can soar, making them less accessible for many families. The complex intricacies of manufacturing and market dynamics mean that well-intentioned regulations can sometimes have unintended consequences. Auto efficiency standards. Proposed regulations aiming to enhance fuel efficiency could intensify the pricing problem. The Department of Transportation has projected that implementing these standards could accumulate costs totaling up to $88 billion over time. Ouch! That's a significant figure, and it's likely that the costs will be passed down to the average buyer, increasing what we all have to fork out to drive away in a new car. The sad part is that while the government is trying to promote more eco-friendly options, the responsibilities of these costs lead to an undeniable squeeze on the pockets of everyday consumers. Now, let's switch gears and talk about how rising interest rates play into this affordability puzzle. If you've been keeping an eye on the economic news lately, you know that the Federal Reserve has been increasing interest rates as part of broader economic efforts to combat inflation. While this move is aimed at keeping the economy in check, it has made financing vehicles more expensive. Imagine trying to buy a car on a tight budget, only to find that higher interest rates mean more money added to your monthly payments. Higher payments are a direct hit to take-home budgets, and they are also escalating the risk of borrowers defaulting altogether. The financial burden of rising interest rates is significant. Monthly payments swell, and for many families already navigating the challenges of living with elevated costs, the idea of committing to a new vehicle starts to feel less and less attainable. All of this combines to create a cycle of financial worry, where the dream of owning a reliable car feels like it's slipping further out of reach, even as the government's policies aim to promote accessibility and sustainability. So where does that leave us? It's clear that while the Biden administration is striving to address inflation and push for a more sustainable future, the complexities of the automobile market are complicating those efforts. It raises some crucial questions. How do we strike a balance between promoting energy efficiency and ensuring that cars remain affordable for hardworking families? And how can policies evolve to meet not just economic goals, but also the needs of everyday Americans looking to make sensible purchases without sacrificing financial security?